Well, bless your heart, Frau Troffea. It all started with a jig.
Howdy, folks. John Green here, and today we're talking about a historical head-scratcher that'll make you want to two-step. The dancing plague of 1518. Picture this: Strasbourg, France. July heat hanging heavy like a wet blanket. The kind of heat that makes you want to sit in the shade with a cool drink and not move a muscle. And then, out of nowhere, a woman named Frau Troffea decides to grace the cobblestone streets with her, shall we say, dance moves. She wasn't just tapping her feet or swaying gently. No, she was full-on dancing like her life depended on it. Now, I ain't talking about no waltz or nothing graceful. This wasn't a ballroom dance or a carefully choreographed performance. This lady was cutting a rug like a chicken trying to dodge a rainstorm. Her movements were erratic, wild, and completely unrestrained. Wild, uncontrollable. The kind of jig that'd make Elvis spin in his blue suede shoes. It was a sight to behold, and it quickly drew a crowd. And bless her heart, she kept at it for days. Not just hours, but days on end. She danced through the pain, through the exhaustion. Folks probably thought she'd had a little too much wine, right? Maybe she was just the town eccentric, someone who'd lost her marbles. But little did they know, Frau Troffea was about to become the lead dancer in a historical hoedown that'd leave folks baffled for centuries to come. Her solo act soon turned into a group performance as more and more people joined in. It was like a fever that spread through the town, infecting everyone who saw her. People danced in the streets, in their homes, and even in the churches. It was as if they couldn't stop, no matter how much they wanted to. The town's leaders were at a loss. They tried everything to stop the dancing. They brought in musicians, hoping that organized music would help control the chaos. They even tried to ban dancing altogether, but nothing worked. The dancing plague continued for weeks, with people collapsing from exhaustion, and some even dying from heart attacks or strokes. It was a mystery that puzzled doctors, priests, and scholars alike. What could cause such a strange and deadly phenomenon? Some believed it was a curse, others thought it was a form of mass hysteria. Whatever the cause, the dancing plague of 1518 remains one of history's most bizarre and unexplained events. So next time you feel like dancing, just remember Frau Troffea and her unstoppable jig. You never know where a little dance might lead you. From 1 to 100, this fever's got rhythm. Now here's where things get real interesting, y'all. Frau Troffea's solo act wasn't a one-woman show for long. Oh no, within a week, over 30 folks had joined her impromptu street party. And these weren't folks looking for a good time. They were compelled to dance, driven by some unseen force to shake, rattle, and roll till they dropped from exhaustion. Imagine walking down the street and seeing your baker, your butcher, and your local priest all getting down like their lives depended on it, unable to stop. Talk about a sight. By the end of the month, the number of dancers had swelled to over 400. Strasbourg went from a peaceful town to looking like a Renaissance rave gone wrong. A chaotic scene. And the craziest part? These folks weren't doing it on purpose. They were victims of a bizarre epidemic, a historical mystery that still has experts scratching their heads in wonder. Dance until they dropped. Tales from the grooving masses. Picture this. A time when the air was filled with the sound of music. The ground shook with the rhythm of countless feet, and the spirit of dance was so infectious that it swept through entire communities like wildfire. Now you might be thinking, John, dancing don't sound so bad. And you'd be right under normal circumstances. Dance has always been a way for people to express joy, to celebrate, to connect with one another. It's a universal language that transcends time and culture. And you'd be right under normal circumstances. But what if I told you that there was a time when dancing became something much more sinister? A time when it wasn't just about joy and celebration, but about something darker, something almost otherworldly. But this wasn't no ordinary dance-off. This was a phenomenon that baffled historians, doctors, and scholars alike. It was as if the very act of dancing had taken on a life of its own, compelling people to move without rest, without reason, and without end. These folks were moving and grooving for days, sometimes even weeks on end. Imagine the sheer physical toll that would take on a person. Their bodies were pushed to the brink, muscles screaming in protest, yet they couldn't stop. It was as if they were possessed by an uncontrollable force. They weren't eating, sleeping, or taking care of themselves. Basic human needs were cast aside in the face of this relentless compulsion to dance. It was a sight both mesmerizing and horrifying. A dance of life and death. Imagine the exhaustion, the dehydration, the sheer muscle aches. Their bodies were pushed to the absolute limit and beyond. The human body can only take so much before it starts to break down, and these dancers were no exception. Some folks even danced themselves to death, their bodies pushed beyond their limits. It was a tragic end for many, their lives cut short by an inexplicable force that drove them to dance until they could dance no more. Chroniclers of the time wrote about folks with bloodshot eyes, sweat-soaked clothes, and expressions of pure agony on their faces. These accounts paint a vivid picture of the suffering endured by those caught in the grip of this strange phenomenon. It was a dance craze turned nightmare. What started as a joyful expression of life became a harrowing ordeal, a test of endurance that few could survive. The line between ecstasy and agony blurred, leaving behind a legacy of both wonder and horror.
One account tells the story of a young woman, barely more than a girl, who danced for days without stop. Her story is just one of many, but it captures the essence of the tragedy that unfolded during this time. Her family tried to restrain her, to make her rest, but it was no use. They watched in helpless despair as she continued to dance, her body moving with a will of its own. It was as if she was caught in a trance, unable to break free. She danced until she collapsed, her body spent and her mind still caught in the grip of whatever force had taken hold. Her story is a poignant reminder of the mysterious and often inexplicable nature of human behavior and the lengths to which we can be driven by forces beyond our control. This phenomenon, often referred to as the dancing plague, remains one of history's most enigmatic events. Scholars have proposed various theories, from mass hysteria to ergot poisoning, but no definitive explanation has ever been found. Today we look back on these events with a mix of fascination and disbelief. How could such a thing happen? What drove these people to dance to the point of death? The answers may never be fully known, but the stories continue to captivate our imaginations. The dancing plague serves as a reminder of the mysteries that still exist in our understanding of the human mind and body. It challenges us to consider the limits of our knowledge and the potential for the extraordinary to occur in even the most ordinary of circumstances. In the end, the tales from the groove-in masses are a testament to the power of dance, both as a source of joy and as a force that can push us to our very limits. They remind us of the delicate balance between celebration and compulsion, and the fine line that separates the two. So next time you find yourself caught up in the rhythm, remember the stories of those who danced before you. Dance with joy, but also with awareness, for the power of dance is both beautiful and profound.
What in tarnation caused this? It's a question that's been bugging folks for centuries. Imagine a whole town suddenly gripped by an uncontrollable urge to dance day and night until they collapse from sheer exhaustion. It's like something out of a tall tale, but it really happened. Theories wilder than a bucking bronco. You see, when people are faced with the unexplainable, their imaginations run wild. And boy, did they come up with some doozies to explain this dancing delirium. So, what in the world caused this dancing delirium? Was it some kind of supernatural force or maybe a strange disease? Theories range from the plausible to the downright bizarre. Well, that's the million-dollar question, ain't it? Folks back then were just as puzzled as we are today. They didn't have the science we do now, so they turned to what they knew best: folklore, religion, and a bit of good old-fashioned guesswork. Over the years, folks have come up with a whole heap of theories, some more believable than others. From curses to psychological phenomena, the explanations are as varied as the people who proposed them. Some folks back then figured it was a curse, a divine punishment for the sins of the city. They believed that the town had angered the heavens, and this was their way of paying the price. People would gather in churches, praying for forgiveness, hoping to lift the curse. Others blamed hot-tempered elves, saying they'd infected the dancers with a bad case of the St. Vitus dance. These mischievous creatures were thought to cause all sorts of trouble, and a dancing plague seemed right up their alley. But let's be honest, folks. Those explanations are about as satisfying as a screen door on a submarine. They might make for good stories, but they don't hold much water when you look at them closely.
Today we've got some more, shall we say, modern theories. With the benefit of hindsight and a bit more scientific know-how, we've come up with explanations that might just make a bit more sense. Theories. Some folks think it was mass hysteria, a sort of psychological chain reaction that spread like wildfire through the stressed-out population. Imagine the pressure of daily life, the fear of the unknown, and the power of suggestion all combining to create a perfect storm of panic and confusion. Some folks think it was mass hysteria, a sort of psychological chain reaction that spread like wildfire through the stressed-out population. When one person started dancing, others followed, caught up in the frenzy. It was like a domino effect, each person influencing the next.
Others point to ergot poisoning, where a fungus on rye bread could have caused hallucinations and convulsions. This theory suggests that the townspeople were unknowingly ingesting a substance that made them see and feel things that weren't really there. And then there's the theory that it was all a big old case of stress-induced madness. Life in those days was tough, and the constant strain could have pushed folks to the brink. When you're living on the edge, it doesn't take much to tip you over. Life in the 1500s wasn't no picnic, y'all. People were dealing with all sorts of hardships, from crop failures to plagues. The daily grind was enough to wear anyone down, and sometimes folks just snapped. Between famine, disease, and political unrest, folks were under a whole heap of pressure. The fear of the unknown, the struggle to survive, and the constant threat of danger created a perfect storm of stress and anxiety. Maybe dancing was their way of letting off some steam, even if it was a tad extreme. In a world where so much was out of their control, dancing might have been a way to reclaim a bit of joy, even if it was fleeting. It was a way to forget their troubles, if only for a little while. So whether it was a curse, mass hysteria, ergot poisoning, or just plain old stress, the dancing plague remains one of history's most fascinating mysteries. It's a reminder that sometimes the human mind and body can react in ways that are as unpredictable as a bucking bronco. And as we continue to study and learn, we might get closer to the truth. But for now, the dancing plague of the 1500s remains a wild and bewildering chapter in the story of humanity. So next time you find yourself tapping your toes to a catchy tune, just remember, there was a time when dancing wasn't just for fun. It was a mystery that baffled the best minds of the age. And who knows, maybe one day, we'll finally unravel the secrets of this strange and wondrous phenomenon.
If you enjoyed this dive into history's strangest epidemic, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating tales from the past. Thanks for watching.